The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Space Council sparkled under the light of 3 artificial suns. Zixtar, the blue-skinned Centaurian representative, floated near the holographic display, his tentacles waving in confusion as he studied the battle records from Earth's recent conflict with the Draxian pirates. "This cannot be correct," he muttered, his translator converting his clicks into standard galactic common. "The reaction times. They're impossible." The data showed human soldiers responding to threats in microseconds, making complex tactical decisions faster than most species could blink. At first, Zixtar assumed it was a measurement error, but as he dug deeper into Earth's military archives, a pattern emerged. Carol White sat at her desk in the Human Liaison office, sipping her morning coffee when her comm unit chimed. The message was marked urgent from the Council's Investigation Division. She brushed her blonde hair back and opened the message, expecting another routine inquiry about Earth's military protocols. "Lieutenant White, your presence is required in Chamber 17. Priority Alpha." Carol's eyebrows rose. Priority Alpha clearance wasn't handed out for trivial matters. She grabbed her tablet and headed for the transport tube. The Council's massive headquarters stretched across several kilometers of space, held in a stable orbit around Jupiter. When she arrived at Chamber 17, Frank Martinez was already there. The broad-shouldered Marine stood at attention, his dark eyes focused on the floating form of Zixtar. "Lieutenant White, Major Martinez, thank you for coming." Zixtar began, his tentacles creating intricate patterns that indicated concern. "We've discovered something unusual in your species' combat records." The holographic display came to life, showing footage from various human battles. Carol watched as soldiers dodged incoming fire, pilots threaded needles through asteroid fields, and ground troops made split-second decisions that should have been physically impossible. "Would either of you care to explain how your species achieves these reaction times?" Zixtar asked. Carol and Frank exchanged glances. "Sir, what exactly are you referring to?" Carol asked carefully. Zixtar manipulated the controls, and a new set of data appeared. "Your soldiers are consistently performing at speeds that exceed known biological limitations, even accounting for your species' natural attributes. These results are extraordinary." Frank stepped forward, his experience as a field commander evident in his stance. "Sir, are you suggesting there's something unusual about our combat performance?" "Unusual?" Zixtar's skin rippled with different shades of blue. "Major Martinez, your species is routinely operating at speeds that should be impossible. We've analyzed the data thoroughly. Human soldiers are processing information and reacting up to 40 times faster than any known sentient species." Carol felt her pulse quicken. She had experienced it herself during her brief combat tour. That strange sensation where time seemed to slow down, where split seconds stretched into meaningful intervals allowing for careful decision-making. "We need to understand this capability," Zixtar continued. "The Council has authorized a full investigation. Lieutenant White, you will coordinate with our science division. Major Martinez, we need you to help set up controlled testing environments." Over the next few days, Carol worked with the Council's scientists to establish testing protocols. They converted one of the training chambers into a specialized facility, equipped with sensors capable of measuring neural activity, time perception, and reaction speeds. The first breakthrough came during a simple reflex test. Private Lisa Cooper, a fresh recruit from Earth's Space Force, was placed in a combat simulator. As soon as the virtual threats appeared, her neural patterns showed a dramatic shift. "Look at this," Dr. Engstol, the Council's chief neurologist, pointed at the readings. "Her temporal perception is literally altering. She's experiencing time at a different rate than we are." Carol watched through the observation window as Lisa navigated through the combat scenario with impossible grace. "We always called it combat focus," she explained. "It's something every human soldier experiences, but we never realized it was unique to our species." The implications were staggering. Humans weren't just good at combat. They possessed an innate ability to alter their perception of time under stress. What felt like normal reactions to them appeared as superhuman feats to other species. Frank organized a series of escalating tests, bringing in soldiers with varying levels of experience. Each demonstration reinforced the initial findings. Whether it was a rookie or a veteran, all humans showed the same ability to enter this altered state of temporal perception. "The Council needs to be informed immediately," Zixtar announced after reviewing the preliminary results. "This changes everything we thought we knew about human military capabilities." Carol spent hours preparing the report, carefully documenting each test and result. She included historical records that now made sense in light of their discovery. Instances where human forces had achieved victories that had previously been attributed to luck or superior technology. As she finalized the report, Frank entered her office, his face serious. "The word's getting out," he said quietly. "Other species representatives are starting to ask questions. Some are concerned." Carol nodded, understanding the implications. Humanity had just been revealed to possess a natural ability that made them incredibly effective warriors. "Do you think this will cause problems?" "It might," Frank admitted, leaning against her desk. "But it might also make others think twice before starting conflicts with Earth or our colonies." The following morning, Carol and Frank presented their findings to the full council. The chamber was packed with representatives from every major species in known space. As the data appeared on the massive holographic displays, a hush fell over the assembly. "This ability appears to be universal among humans," Carol explained to the gathered representatives. "Our testing shows it's not limited by age, gender, or training level, though experience helps individuals make better use of the enhanced perception." Questions came from all directions. Was it genetic? Could it be replicated? Was it a threat to galactic peace? Carol answered each inquiry as best she could, emphasizing that humans had possessed this ability throughout their history without using it for conquest. As the session ended, Zixtar approached Carol and Frank. "The Council will need time to process this information," he said. "But I want you both to know. This discovery might be the most significant development in interspecies relations since Earth joined the galactic community." Carol watched the representatives file out of the chamber, their expressions ranging from worry to fascination. Humanity had just revealed yet another surprising trait to their galactic neighbors, and she knew this was only the beginning of a much larger conversation. Frank touched her shoulder. "Ready for what comes next?" Carol smiled, thinking of all the tests and demonstrations that lay ahead. "Ready as we'll ever be. At least now we know why humans have always been so good at beating the odds." The discovery of humanity's unique temporal perception would change their standing in the galactic community forever. As Carol left the council chamber that day, she couldn't help but wonder what other surprises her species might have in store for their alien allies. Linda Bradley stood in the observation room, watching through reinforced glass as alien scientists bustled around their latest test subject. Private Steve Miller lay in the scanning chamber, his vital signs displayed on floating holographic screens, while sophisticated equipment measured every aspect of his neural activity. Initiating combat simulation in 3, 2, 1. Dr. Engsthol's melodious voice counted down as the virtual reality system engaged. The change was immediate and dramatic. Steve's neural patterns shifted into what they now called combat configuration, and his perception of time altered drastically. On the monitors, they could see how his brain processed information at rates that seemed impossible to the alien observers. "Remarkable," whispered Kurtel, a crystalline being from the Rigel system. "His neural pathways are operating at speeds we previously thought impossible for organic beings." Linda made notes on her tablet as she watched the readings. After 3 weeks of intensive study, they were finally beginning to understand the mechanism behind humanity's unique ability. The discovery had sent shockwaves through the scientific community, and research teams from across the galaxy had gathered to study this phenomenon. "Dr. Bradley," called Dr. Engstol, his 8 eyes blinking in sequence, "I believe we've isolated the trigger mechanism." Linda moved closer to his station, examining the complex web of neural activity displayed on his screen. The human brain showed a unique pattern when entering combat mode, a cascade of neural responses that resulted in altered time perception. In the testing chamber, Steve was effortlessly navigating through a complex combat scenario. What appeared as lightning-fast reactions to the observers was, to him, a carefully considered series of decisions made in what felt like normal time. Joe Thompson, a veteran space marine with 20 years of combat experience, entered the observation room. His weathered face showed interest as he watched the ongoing test. "How's our guinea pig doing?" he asked, standing beside Linda. "Exceeding all expectations," she replied. "The aliens can barely believe what they're seeing. How about you? Ready for your demonstration?" Joe nodded, his expression serious. "Just like any other day at the office, Doc. Though I never thought I'd be showing off something we all took for granted." The initial test concluded, and Steve emerged from the chamber, looking slightly tired but otherwise fine. The alien scientists crowded around him, their instruments taking readings while their translators struggled to keep up with their excited chatter. Joe took his turn in the chamber next. As a veteran, his control over the combat time phenomenon was far more refined than Steve's. The aliens watched in amazement as he completed increasingly complex scenarios, his reaction times defying their understanding of physics. The most fascinating aspect, Dr. Engstol explained to the gathered observers, is that humans can maintain this state for extended periods. What we initially thought was a brief emergency response is actually a sustainable altered state of consciousness. Linda recorded the data as Joe demonstrated various combat scenarios. His neural patterns showed even more pronounced changes than the younger soldiers, suggesting that experience enhanced the natural ability. "Tell us, Marine Thompson," Kurtal asked after the demonstration, "how does it feel when you enter this state?" Joe considered the question carefully. "Everything slows down, but not in a bad way. It's like having all the time in the world to make decisions, even in the middle of chaos. I always thought everyone could do it." The research continued through the day, with more human subjects demonstrating their abilities. Each test revealed new aspects of the phenomenon. Some soldiers showed stronger effects than others, but every human tested displayed the same basic capability. During a break in testing, Linda met with the alien research team to discuss their findings. The meeting room hummed with energy as scientists from a dozen different species shared their observations. "The implications are staggering," Dr. Engstol stated, manipulating a holographic model of human neural pathways. "This ability gives humans a significant advantage in any high-stress situation, not just combat. We've seen similar results in emergency response personnel and pilots," Linda added. "The ability triggers in any high-pressure situation where split-second decisions are crucial." Kurtal's crystalline form sparkled as they processed this information. "This explains many historical anomalies in human performance records. Your species' success in space exploration and crisis management now makes much more sense." The discussion was interrupted by an urgent message from the Space Council. Reports were coming in about increasing tensions in several sectors. The possibility of conflict was rising, and the Council needed to understand the full extent of human capabilities. Linda organized another series of tests, this time focusing on group dynamics. They placed teams of human soldiers in complex scenarios, studying how they coordinated while experiencing altered time perception. The results were impressive. Human teams showed remarkable synchronization, each member operating in their enhanced state while maintaining perfect coordination with their squad mates. "It's like a dance," Joe explained to the fascinated aliens. "We're all moving in the same slowed-down world, reading each other's movements, anticipating actions before they happen." As the day drew to a close, Linda compiled the research data for her report to the Council. The findings were clear. Humans possessed a natural ability that gave them an enormous advantage in combat and crisis situations. "Dr. Bradley," Dr. Engstol approached her as she worked. "There's something else we've noticed. The human ability seems to be evolving. becoming stronger with each generation. Linda looked up from her tablet, intrigued. What do you mean? The younger test subjects are showing stronger baseline abilities than historical records suggest was normal. It's as if your species is naturally enhancing this trait through evolution. This new information added another layer of complexity to their findings. Not only did humans possess this remarkable ability, but it was also becoming more pronounced over time. Joe, who had stayed to help with the final tests of the day, joined their conversation. Makes sense, in a way. We've been fighting and surviving for our entire history. Natural selection would favor those who could make better use of this ability. Linda included this observation in her report, knowing it would interest the Council. The implications of an evolving human combat capability would certainly impact galactic politics. As the research teams prepared to end their day's work, Linda couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and concern. Their discovery had revealed humanity's unique place in the galaxy, but it had also raised important questions about the future of interspecies relations. Tomorrow we'll begin testing the limits of sustained enhancement, she announced to the assembled scientists. We need to understand just how long humans can maintain this state under various conditions. The aliens nodded in agreement, their diverse forms creating an unusual tableau in the laboratory. They had come seeking answers about human combat capabilities, and instead had found something that challenged their understanding of what was possible. As Linda left the laboratory that evening, she reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. The galaxy now looked at humanity in a new light, and she wondered what other surprises might emerge as they continued their investigation into this uniquely human ability. The emergency alarms blared through the Space Council headquarters, their urgent tones echoing off the crystalline walls. Mary Sullivan, Earth's representative, rushed into the crisis chamber where dozens of alien diplomats had already gathered. The central hologram showed multiple systems under attack. The Krath, a warlike species from the Outer Rim, had launched simultaneous strikes against several Council worlds. Their ships appeared without warning, using some new technology that bypassed standard detection systems. 3 colony worlds have already fallen, announced High Counselor Vex Thor, his metallic scales reflecting the red emergency lights. The Krath forces are moving faster than we can respond. Mary watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Krath had chosen their targets well, striking at worlds with minimal defenses, but high strategic value. Their ships moved with devastating efficiency, overwhelming local forces before help could arrive. The 7th Fleet is 6 hours from the nearest conflict zone, reported Admiral Zixna, her tentacles writhing with agitation. By then, the Krath will have established full control of the sector. A murmur of concern rippled through the chamber. The Council's defense forces, spread thin across vast distances, couldn't respond quickly enough to this new threat. The Krath had found a weakness in their defense strategy and were exploiting it ruthlessly. Mary stepped forward, her voice clear and firm. Earth can have combat-ready forces in position within 2 hours. The chamber fell silent. All eyes turned to her, many showing signs of their species' equivalent of surprise. Since the discovery of humanity's unique combat abilities, there had been ongoing debate about how to integrate human forces into Council operations. Representative Sullivan. Vex Thor said carefully, "Your species' capabilities are still under study. We haven't established protocols for." "People are dying," Mary interrupted, something rarely done in Council proceedings. "We have ships ready. We have soldiers trained for exactly this type of crisis. And as your own research has confirmed, we have abilities that make us uniquely suited to combat situations." The emergency display updated, showing more craft ships emerging from stealth. A 4th colony world was now under attack. The situation was deteriorating rapidly. "I moved to grant emergency authorization for human military deployment," called out Representative Crittle, their crystalline form pulsing with urgent light patterns. The motion required immediate response. One by one, the Council members registered their votes. Mary held her breath as the tally climbed. "Motion carried," Vex Thor announced. Representative Sullivan, you have authorization to deploy human forces to the affected sectors. Mary didn't waste time. She activated her comm unit, connecting directly to Earth's military command. This is Representative Sullivan. Authorization code Alpha 7 Delta. Deploy the quick response forces. All ships, combat clearance granted. Within minutes, human warships began jumping into the contested sectors. Unlike the larger Council vessels, these ships were smaller, faster, and crewed entirely by humans whose enhanced combat perception made them uniquely effective in battle. The Council chamber watched in amazement as the tactical display updated. Human ships engaged the craft forces with unprecedented precision. What appeared as blur-fast maneuvers to alien observers were carefully calculated moves to the human crews. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Zixna. "They're reacting faster than the craft ships can adjust their targeting." Reports began flowing in from the battlefields. Human ground forces had landed on 2 of the invaded worlds, engaging craft troops directly. The aliens' superior technology meant little against opponents who could perceive and react to threats before they fully developed. "Second colony secured," announced a controller. "Third colony reporting craft forces in retreat. Fourth colony, human forces have prevented the craft landing entirely." Mary felt pride mixed with concern as she watched the battles unfold. Humanity had kept their combat abilities quiet for years, unsure how the galactic community would react. Now, there was no more hiding what they could do. A new alert flashed across the tactical display. The craft had launched a massive counterattack, concentrating their forces against the human ships defending the third colony. "They're adapting," noted Vexthor, "trying to overwhelm the humans with sheer numbers." But the human ships danced through the craft formation, their crews operating in that strange enhanced state that made time itself seem to flow differently for them. What looked like chaos to outside observers was a carefully orchestrated battle ballet to the human pilots. Representative Sullivan, called Dr. Angstol, who had been monitoring human neural patterns during the battle, "Your soldiers have been maintaining their enhanced state for over an hour. We didn't know this was possible." Mary nodded. "In actual combat situations, with proper training and support, our people can maintain combat focus for extended periods. We've recorded instances of Special Forces teams operating in this state for days when necessary." This information caused another stir in the chamber. The Council had known about humanity's abilities, but the full extent of their capabilities was still being revealed. After 3 hours of intense fighting, the situation had completely reversed. The craft forces were in full retreat, their carefully planned surprise attack thoroughly demolished by the human response. "The Council demands a full report on human military capabilities," Vexthor announced as the emergency session wound down. "We need to understand exactly what your species brings to galactic defense." Mary agreed, knowing this crisis had changed everything. Humanity's role in the galactic community would never be the same. As she left the chamber, her comm unit chimed with updates from the battlefield. The human forces had suffered minimal casualties while completely turning the tide of what could have been a devastating attack. The craft had unknowingly done what centuries of peaceful interaction couldn't. They had demonstrated to the galaxy exactly why humans had survived and thrived despite being a relatively young spacefaring species. Mary smiled as she headed to her office to begin drafting her report. The galaxy had just learned an important lesson. Never underestimate humanity's ability to respond to a crisis. Their unique perception of time and combat situations had just saved countless lives and changed the balance of power in the galaxy forever. Commander Peter Walsh stood on the bridge of the Earth ship Swift Justice, watching his tactical display as human forces deployed across 3 different conflict zones. After the initial success against the craft attack, the Council had formally requested human military assistance in securing their vulnerable sectors. "All ships report ready," announced his tactical officer, Amy Rodriguez. "Strike groups are in position and awaiting your command." Peter nodded, his mind already operating in the enhanced state that humans now openly acknowledge. What appeared as lightning-fast decisions to their alien allies felt like careful, measured choices to him. "Begin Operation Safeguard," he ordered. All units cleared to engage using full combat protocols. Across space, human ships moved with precision that amazed their alien observers. Council representatives watched from safe distances as human forces demonstrated their capabilities in full-scale military operations for the first time. The Krath had regrouped after their initial defeat, thinking they had merely been caught off guard. They didn't understand they were facing an entirely different kind of opponent. Their ships moved into attack formation, weapons charged. "Let them make the first move," Peter instructed his fleet. "Show them exactly what we can do." The Krath opened fire, their energy weapons lighting up space. To normal observers, the scene was chaos. Streaks of deadly energy crossing the void at near-light speeds. But to the human crews, operating in their enhanced perceptual state, each blast moved slowly enough to track and avoid. "Strike Group 1. Execute Attack Pattern Delta," Peter commanded. He watched as his ships moved through the Krath formation, their movements precise and coordinated in ways that seemed impossible to alien observers. On a nearby council vessel, senior military officials watched in amazement. Human ships slipped through gaps in the enemy formation that appeared and disappeared in fractions of a second. Their targeting was precise, their maneuvers executed with impossible timing. "Recording all combat data," reported Dr. Engstol, who had been assigned to document human performance. "Their neural patterns are stable despite maintaining enhanced states for extended periods." The battle unfolded like a complex dance. Human ships anticipated enemy movements, responding to attacks before they fully developed. The Krath's superior technology meant little against opponents who could perceive and react to threats at such accelerated rates. "Second wave incoming," Amy announced. "Enemy forces attempting to adapt their tactics." Peter smiled slightly. The Krath were learning, but they were fighting against something they couldn't understand. Human crews coordinated their actions with split-second timing, their enhanced perception allowing them to execute complex maneuvers as easily as others might walk. "Launch fighters," he ordered. "Show them what our pilots can really do." Small craft poured from the larger ships, human pilots pushing their machines to limits that seemed to defy physics. They flew through spaces that appeared too small, made turns that should have torn their ships apart, and hit targets that moved too fast for normal targeting systems to track. On the Council observation vessel, the alien officials watched in stunned silence. They had known about human capabilities from the research, but seeing them applied in actual combat was something else entirely. "All strike groups report successful engagement," Amy reported. "Enemy forces are breaking formation. They appear to be withdrawing." Peter kept his forces in position, knowing the Krath might attempt one final desperate attack. His crew maintained their enhanced state easily, their training allowing them to operate in this accelerated perception for hours without strain. "Council vessels are moving to secure the sector," announced his communications officer. "They're requesting we maintain position until they can establish defensive lines." The next few hours proved crucial. Human forces demonstrated their ability to coordinate with Council ships, showing how their unique capabilities could complement traditional military forces rather than replace them. "Commander Walsh, called a Council representative over the comm. We request permission to send observation teams to your ships. We need to document these tactics for future training purposes." Peter agreed, knowing this was part of humanity's new role in the galaxy. Their abilities were no longer a secret to be hidden, but a resource to be shared, carefully and strategically. The observers arrived, their instruments recording everything as human crews continued their work. They watched in fascination as medical scanners showed the neural patterns of humans operating in their enhanced state, noting how crews could switch this ability on and off as needed. "Your species has revolutionized our understanding of combat operations," admitted Admiral Zixna, who had come to observe personally. "We need to completely revise our tactical doctrines." Peter worked with the Council representatives to explain how human forces operated. He showed them how crews coordinated their enhanced perceptions, how they maintained formation despite moving at speeds that appeared chaotic to outside observers. The key is understanding that we're not actually moving faster, he explained. We're just processing information and making decisions at an accelerated rate. It makes everything else seem slower to us. The council observers took careful notes as human forces conducted combat drills. They watched as fighters performed maneuvers that their own species would consider impossible, understanding now that it wasn't about faster reflexes, but about having more subjective time to react. Your pilots are maintaining perfect formation despite moving at speeds our targeting systems can barely track, noted one observer. How is this possible? To them, it feels like normal flying, Peter explained. They're experiencing time differently, which gives them more opportunity to adjust and coordinate. As the day progressed, more council ships arrived to secure the sector. The human forces had demonstrated their worth, showing how their unique abilities could turn the tide of any battle. Peter received new orders from Earth Command. His fleet would remain in the sector, working with council forces to develop new combined tactics that took advantage of human capabilities. We're not just showing them what we can do, he told his crew. We're teaching them how to work with us, how to integrate our abilities into their strategies. The implementation of human combat forces into the galactic defense structure had begun. It would change everything: tactics, strategy, and the very nature of space warfare. As Peter watched his ships move into their new patrol positions, he knew this was just the beginning. Humanity's unique abilities had earned them a new place in the galaxy, and with it came new responsibilities. All ships maintain combat-ready status, he ordered. This is our new normal. Let's show the galaxy what humans can really do. The Grand Chamber of the Space Council buzzed with activity as representatives from every known species gathered for the historic session. Susan Howard, Earth's new military advisor to the Council, stood at the podium, preparing to present her findings on the integration of human combat capabilities into galactic defense strategies. The past 3 months have shown us something remarkable, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. Not only have human forces proven effective in combat situations, but we've also discovered ways to enhance the capabilities of mixed-species crews. The holographic displays behind her showed footage from recent joint operations. Human ships worked seamlessly with alien vessels, their unique abilities complementing traditional tactics in ways nobody had imagined possible. We've developed new training protocols, Susan continued, gesturing to the detailed statistics floating beside her. These methods help other species adapt to working with humans operating in enhanced perception states. The council members watched intently as she demonstrated the new techniques. The success of human forces against the Krav had led to a complete reorganization of galactic defense strategies. Every major species now wanted human military advisors. Alan Parker, one of Earth's veteran combat instructors, stepped forward to explain the practical aspects of the new training programs. We're teaching other species how to anticipate and work with our enhanced timing, he explained. It's like learning to dance with a partner who moves to a different rhythm. The changes weren't limited to military applications. Human emergency response teams were now in high demand across the galaxy. Their ability to make split-second decisions in crisis situations had proven invaluable in everything from disaster relief to space rescue operations. We've seen a 40% increase in successful crisis responses when human teams are involved, Susan reported. Our ability to process information quickly and react appropriately has saved countless lives. The political landscape had shifted dramatically as well. Earth, once considered a minor player in galactic politics, now held significant influence in council decisions. Their unique abilities made them valuable allies and dangerous potential opponents. The Krav incursion taught us an important lesson, High Counselor Vex Thor acknowledged. The galaxy needs humanity's unique capabilities, but we must establish clear guidelines for their deployment. Susan spent hours working with council legal experts to draft new regulations regarding human combat forces. The guidelines had to balance the need for human assistance with concerns about their overwhelming advantages in conflict situations. We propose a three-tier system, she explained to the assembled representatives. Different levels of human involvement based on the nature and severity of the situation. The council chambers filled with discussion as members debated the proposals. Some worried about becoming too dependent on human capabilities, while others argued for even greater integration of human forces into their defensive strategies. Earth has no desire to dominate galactic affairs, Susan assured them. We want to be partners, not overlords. Our abilities are a resource to be shared, not a weapon to be feared. To demonstrate this commitment, Earth opened its training facilities to other species. Alien observers could now study human combat techniques firsthand, learning to work alongside crews operating in enhanced perception states. Understanding leads to trust, Alan explained as he guided a group of alien military officers through a training exercise. When they see how we operate, they realize we're not a threat to them. The integration process wasn't always smooth. Cultural differences and varying physiological capabilities created challenges. Some species struggled to adapt to human reaction times, while others found new ways to complement human abilities with their own unique traits. Every species brings something valuable to the table, Susan reminded the council. Humans may process time differently in combat, but we still need the technological expertise of the Centaurians, the strategic insight of the Regelians, and the defensive capabilities of the Arcturians. Earth's political status continued to evolve as more species sought human assistance. Trade agreements were revised, technological exchanges accelerated, and cultural barriers began to break down. We're entering a new era of galactic cooperation, announced Mary Sullivan, who had been promoted to Earth's senior representative on the council. Our differences make us stronger when we work together. The effects rippled through every aspect of galactic society. Sports competitions had to be redesigned to account for human temporal perception. Emergency services across the galaxy were restructured to incorporate human response teams. Even entertainment and arts were influenced as other species became fascinated with the human experience of time. The discovery of our unique abilities changed everything, Susan reflected as she concluded her presentation. But the real achievement has been learning how to share these abilities for the benefit of all species. The Council voted unanimously to approve the new protocols for human military deployment. Earth would maintain its independence while providing crucial support to galactic defense forces. Training programs would continue to expand, helping other species work effectively alongside humans. As the session ended, Susan stood with Alan watching the representatives file out of the chamber. "Did you ever think we'd end up here?" she asked. "Teaching aliens how to work with our combat time perception." Alan smiled, remembering the early days of the discovery. "I always knew humans were special," he replied. "Now we get to show the galaxy just how special we can be." The future held new challenges, but humanity had found its place in the galactic community. Their unique abilities had opened doors, but it was their willingness to share and cooperate that had truly changed their status in the galaxy. As Susan prepared to return to Earth, she received messages from dozens of worlds requesting human advisors and trainers. The galaxy had accepted humanity's gift, and together they would build something greater than any single species could achieve alone. The time dilation ability that humans had taken for granted throughout their history had become the key to a new era of galactic peace and cooperation. It wasn't just about combat anymore. It was about using their unique perception to help build a better future for all species.